I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a additional meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I am Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is December 5th, 2023. The time is 1:35 in the afternoon, and this meeting is being held in the Council Chambers, Room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building. This meeting will be followed by the regular monthly meeting of the Council, and which will be the 17th meeting, in case anyone wants to know, the 17th legislative meeting of Council Period 25. There are at least one member who's participating in this meeting. There are at least two members of the council who are participating virtually, Councilmember Vincent Gray and Councilmember Kenya McDuffie. We have several bills for markup in the Committee of the Whole, by the Committee of the Whole, and then we have roughly a half dozen bills that have been reported out of other committees that have to go through the Committee of the Whole for clearance for the legislative meeting today. We always begin our Committee of the Whole meetings by determining whether we have a quorum. It's kind of a good thing, useful thing to do to know if we have a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Fruman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Robert White. Councilmember Robert White. Councilmember Tran White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. As I indicated, we have three measures for markup in the Committee of the Whole. The first is PR 25-300, Public Charter School Board Carissa Stanley Beatty Confirmation Resolution of 2023. The purpose of this resolution is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Ms. Carissa Stanley Beatty for appointment as a member of the Public Charter School Board for a four-year term to expire February 24th, 2026. The District of Columbia School Reform Act of 1995 gave the District of Columbia the authority to start independent, autonomous public schools, commonly known as charter schools. The law initially gave authority to the District of Columbia Board of Education to charter these schools and also established a Public Charter School Board, or PCSB. The 7-member PCSB was created for the purpose of authorizing new charters, monitoring the operation and student academic progress of the schools under its purview, and ensuring that the public charter schools under its authority are in compliance with the terms of their charter and applicable federal and local laws. As an independent authorizer, the PCSB charters new schools through a comprehensive application review process, monitors existing charter schools for compliance with applicable local and federal laws, and ensures public charter schools are held accountable for both academic and non-academic performance. The Public Charter School Board, or PCSB, is currently the District of Columbia's sole charter school authorizer. The Board of Education no longer has that authority. And the PCSB now oversees 69 charter local education agencies, or LEAs, with 135 campuses. If Ms. Stanley Beatty is confirmed, there would still remain one empty seat on the Public Charter School Board. Ms. Stanley began her career in education as a 5th grade math and science teacher with Teach for America. She also has held positions as a full-time program administrator, as a full-time program in the full-time program administration as the site director for Heads Up. She was on the leadership team of Imagine Southeast Public Charter School. She has had a career in policy at the Knowledge Alliance. She's been regional director of the National Capital Region at Leadership for Education Equity, or LEE. In fact, has held several positions there. Between stints at LEE, Ms. Stanley Beatty served as the executive director of a pre-K through 8th grade charter school serving over 650 scholars in Southeast DC. She's a native Washingtonian, has over 20 years of experience in banking and finance, She has held leadership positions with the DC Housing Finance Agency, DC Open Doors, Fidelity and Trust Bank, and Eagle Bank. Across her roles, Ms. Beatty has worked on affordable housing, residential mortgage programs, and commercial acquisitions. Currently, she is the Mid-Atlantic team leader with Amalgamated Bank. She's been involved with education as a parent of a DC public charter school student. She's been a leader with the parent advocacy group PAVE. She was a candidate for the Ward 5 DC State Board of Education representative. And she has also served as the mayoral appointee to the Historic Preservation Review Board. This legislation was introduced at the request of the mayor on June 13th of this year. And the Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on November 21st of this year, meaning last month. The committee's received no testimony or comments in opposition to this legislation. Without objection, I move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? The vote will be on both the print and report with leave for staff. I think we do roll call votes these days still. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The print and report are approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next measure is Bill 25-342, which is now called the Term Clarification Amendment Act of 2023. It was originally introduced as the Public Charter School Board Term Clarification Amendment Act of 2023. And in fact, the committee report that was circulated yesterday speaks to the bill as originally introduced with that title. But as I said, it's now referred to as the Term Clarification Amendment Act of 2023. This bill makes three changes to the law. First, it clarifies the law regarding vacancy appointments to the Public Charter School Board, for which there have always been term limits. The bill clarifies that a vacancy appointment to the Public Charter School Board does not count toward the two-term limitation if the vacancy appointment is less than 3 years. Second, the bill revises the term limit for non-governmental appointees to the Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes to permit appointments and reappointments limited to a maximum of 15 years service. Currently, the law allows 18 years, but with a break in service. Third, Bill 25-342, the committee print, amends a Council Period 1 law to allow, and the amendment would allow council resolutions, including appointment resolutions, to become effective without having to await for publication in the District of Columbia Register. Publication would still be required as soon as possible. Of the Committee of the Whole, no. This bill was introduced by me on June 13th, 2023. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on the bill on November 21st, 2023. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? The roll call vote will be on the print. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
yes,
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Councilmember Parker is absent. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The print is approved unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. The report needs to be revised substantially to reflect the other 2 of the 3 changes that I outlined in my presentation. Is there discussion on the report? By a voice vote. All those in favor of the report say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't hear or see. Have to look, any no votes? The report with leave for staff is approved unanimously. Mr. Deputy General Counsel, how'd that show up so quickly? Mr. Deputy General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
It is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report and hearing record are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. Just a moment. The next measure, Bill 25-540, the School Improvement Amendment Act of 2023. I'm informed that we do not have a fiscal impact statement, so I'm going to withdraw that and bring it back on December 19th, assuming that we have a fiscal impact statement. We don't have a fiscal impact statement. A FIS. Trust me, I've had some conversations. And there's nothing more to it than that there is not a FIS. Thank you very much. So the measure is withdrawn for today. That gets us to consideration of measures from other committees. The first is from the Committee on Recreation and Youth Affairs, chaired by Councilmember Trahan White. It's PR 25-421, entitled Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, Thiene Freeman Confirmation Resolution of 2023. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Chairman. So our committee received recommendation from the mayor through you, September the 19th, 2023, to the Committee on Recreation, Library, and Youth Affairs. Affirms to support the nomination of Thiene Freeman as Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation. Ms. Freeman currently serves as the interim director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, a position she has held since April 2023. She joined DPR as the Deputy Director of Recreation Services, overseeing the direction and management of the agency's recreation programs and operations of all recreation centers, parks, and aquatic facilities. In 2020, she was honored with the K-Fish Award for exemplary service to DC residents, including her work in enhancing the district's Marienberry Summer Youth Employment Program. She started her district government service in 2008 as an out-of-school time coordinator for District of Columbia Public Schools and serves as Associate Director of the Office of Youth Programs at DOES, which is Department of Employment Services, from 2012 to 2022. She is a Ward A resident and plans to remain as a Ward A resident of the District of Columbia throughout her appointment. Her knowledge, personality, experience as interim director has continued to be a tremendous asset to DPR as we look to vote her yay or nay as the permanent director. We had a roundtable on October the 18th in which she came out of committee with a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Are there questions? And we're limited to questions at this point. Not seeing or hearing any. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next measure is PR 25-474, Board of Library Trustees, Maria Peace Confirmation Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Trahan White.
Thank you, Chairman. The Maria Peace Confirmation was introduced to the council on September the 19th, 2023. By way of the mayor through you, Council Chairman Mendelson. The Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs supports the nomination for Maria Peace to the Board of Libraries and Trustees. Ms. Peace is the owner and project manager for PMGL LLC, where she has managed strategic financial budget planning of the company and efforts to grow the company's general contracting services in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia for the last 12 years. Prior to that, she has served as a program manager at General Electric, Government Relations, Global Research for 14 years. Ms. Peace, who received her Bachelor's of Arts and MBA degrees from Trinity University, meets the qualifications to be a public member of the Board of Library Trustees. She is also a Ward 7 resident and plans to remain as a resident in the District of Columbia throughout her appointment. Her education, knowledge, and experience will be a tremendous asset to the Board of Trustees. There was also a question about her library card. We have not received information on that, but she did have a roundtable hearing on October the 18th, 2023, which was voted out of committee unanimously.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Are there questions?
Mr. Chairman, can you
Councilmember
please,
Henderson.
can you, I don't have a specific question for Councilmember White, but can you please put this nomination on the non-consent agenda? Thank you.
You're hearing silence from me, or you're not hearing silence from me because I'm making note of it. If there are no questions, Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
This measure will be placed on the non-consent agenda actually will be removed from the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next two measures were reported out of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor, chaired by Councilmember Anita Bonds. The first is Bill 25-134, Minimum Wage Clarification Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill before us today, Bill 25-134, the Minimum Wage Clarification Amendment Act of 2023, amends DC Law 9-248, the Minimum Wage Act Revision Act of 1992. The bill was introduced by Councilmember Louis George on February 8th, 2023, and was co-introduced by Council members Robert White, Pinto, Parker, Henderson, Nadeau, Gray, and myself, along with a co-sponsorship from Council Member Fruman. We held a public hearing on May 26, 2023, where members of the public spoke in favor of the bill. DOES Director Dr. Unique Morris Hughes also supported the bill, particularly because it will help address wage manipulation. The committee held a markup of this bill on November 16th, 2023, and received unanimous support from the committee. The bill would amend the Minimum Wage Act Revision Act of 1992 to clarify the circumstances when an employer must pay an employee working in the District of Columbia the district minimum wage. The bill would require that employers pay the District of Columbia minimum wage to employees that work in the district for at least 2 hours in one work week. Under the current law, an employee is only required to be paid our city's minimum wage if they work at least 50% of their hours inside the district. The district minimum wage is higher than our neighboring states, and so some employers move employees in and out of the city to avoid the 50% threshold so that they do not have to pay the district's minimum wage. For example, construction traffic controllers or flaggers may be moved from one construction site to another on the same day of work. Companies can move flaggers from Virginia to Maryland to DC and back to Virginia all in 1 week, so they never work more than half of their hours in the district. By doing this, they don't have to pay those employees the DC minimum wage at all. This bill will close that loophole and discourage gamemanship so that everyone who works in the district is fairly compensated for their work. The DC minimum wage is meant to be a living wage that pays workers a fair wage for their work. Most of our neighbors have similar protections in their workers. In fact, you can find similar laws across the country in places like New Mexico, Maine, and of course, Maryland. If enacted, this bill will make the city and the region more fair for its workers, and I encourage the council to support the legislation. Thank you, Chairman, and I move the bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Are there questions from members? Councilmember Pinto has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some questions this morning or at the breakfast, particularly around individuals who in practice may be serving as an employer by hiring someone kind of on a one-off occasion. My questions have since been resolved, and so it is good with me for this to go back to the consent agenda if it's not too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Lewis George?
Yes.
Questions?
Yes, I will frame it in a question. I want to thank Councilmember Bonds and her hardworking staff for working with me and my staff to move this legislation. I wanted to ask, did we get a RIA report from the Council Office of Racial Equity? And if so, what was the findings of the RIA report?
I'm sorry, someone was in my ear. Could you?
The
repeat
RIA
that?
report, is it true that the RIA report, according to the Office of Racial Equity, noted that this would likely improve economic outcomes for Black, Indigenous, and other residents of color in the District of Columbia? And additionally, according to the RIA, a 2017 report from the Department of Employment Services found that all Black workers in the district, about 30% earn $15 per hour compared to just under 10% of white workers who are earning 15 per hour or less. And so this legislation would likely improve their economic outcome.
Thank you very much for your question. And we on this dais and throughout the city do everything that we can to lift up our Black and Brown community. And so thank you for putting that on the record. Thank you.
I think I saw another hand, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to express thanks to Councilmember Bonds for moving this bill forward. My question, Councilmember Bonds, I believe as this is referred to an omnibus bill, could you share the other bills that were folded into this one?
Yes. Yes, I can. Just give me a minute because I believe you are the sponsor of one of the other bills.
I believe you're right.
Okay. I may not have it at my fingertips because we have reorganized the record so that we could get the legislation through.
No, I completely understand. And just in the interest of time, I think the bill around prohibiting or the provisions around prohibiting employers to seek wage history is important in terms of wage discrimination that many women face. Is that accurate?
You are 100% correct. And I think specifics about your bill, it relates to hopefully the next bill that I'm able to present forward.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember McDuffie.
I'm slightly confused. I heard a conversation about what sounded like wage transparency, but I thought we were still on minimum wage. I know.
We are. I was incorrect.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
The bill that's before us is Minimum Wage Clarification Amendment Act of 2023, Bill 25-134. Mr. McDuffie, did you have more?
Oh, no, I
Happy.
understand where we are. I think I was confused
Thank
by
you.
the question. And
Councilmember Allen, did you want to be recognized?
I do on the wage transparency, not this one.
Okay. If there are no other questions on Bill 25-134. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it
Does
does.
it have a fiscal impact?
No, it does not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next measure is Bill 25-194, Wage Transparency Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023. And I'm told that Councilmember Bond circulated an amendment this morning to it, which you may choose to move here if there's no objection and there cannot be discussion. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, we are moving the amendment. And the rationale for moving the amendment is to amend the definition of employer to apply to an individual, firm, association, or corporation who uses the services of another person for pay in the district, not including the district or the federal government. Amending the Wage Transparency Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023's definition of employer in this manner maintains consistency with pre-existing DC law provided under the Wage Transparency Act of 2014. The amendment seeks to amend the definition of employer by amending the employer cap size from the 25 or more employees to no employer cap. Furthermore, the amendment seeks to create an additional provision that should an employer not provide a prospective employee with the Act's disclosure, then the prospective employee may inquire about this information. The purpose of this amendment is to conform to existing law and not disrupt the pre-existing protections provided by the Wage Transparency Act of 2014. As stewards of the law, it is our duty to ensure that our amendments bolster pre-existing code, not remove protections that have already been voted on and enacted into our law. Amending the Wage Transparency Act of 2014's employer definition to contain an employer size limitation would remove protections afforded by the current law for any employer outside of the range. And this bill requires employers to disclose wage information to prospective employers and prohibits them from inquiring about a prospective employee's salary history. Creating transparency will reduce gender and racial wage gaps where data overwhelmingly illustrates that persistent systemic pay inequities may exist. The bill makes the district an even more marketable place of employment for job seekers and works to alleviate discrimination by better equipping job seekers in their negotiations for fair pay. Moreover, job seekers will no longer be confined to an earning potential based on their salary history. Instead, candidates will be better positioned to amplify their skills and experiences for a more equitable pay. Taking these steps allows the district to join with 14 other states. May I? One second.
Without objection.
All right. And localities, trailblazing the nation with pay transparency laws. I'll just mention this amendment enumerates the states of Colorado and our neighbor Maryland, which impose no employer size limitations on their wage transparency laws. In fact, in 2021, 88.2% of employees working in the district reported that their firm had 10 or more employees. And in 2022, the figure was 90.9%. 0.5%. An employee size limit of 10 or more employees would consider the recommendation provided by the Office of Attorney General and figures specific to firms. However, according to the Bureau of Labor Standards, quarterly census of employment and wages, on average, 69.1% of businesses in the district have fewer than 5 employees. And therefore, by passing this legislation, the district would help empower prospective employees of the district and contribute to the nearly 44.8 million people in the labor force already covered by wage transparency laws. Removing the employee cap would lower the threshold and allow more employers in the district to adhere to the principle of wage transparency and pay equity without eliminating already guaranteed protections for all employees under the Wage Transparency Act of 2014. And therefore, I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I
Thank-
move the bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. I'm sorry, did you move the amendment?
Yes. Yes, I did. That's part of the amendment. Very lengthy.
The amendment was circulated this morning. If there's no objection, can't discuss it. There's no objection, the amendment will be accepted. Otherwise, this has to be a non-consent and the amendment will be moved at the legislative meeting.
If you can put it on non-consent, Mr. Chairman.
Are you objecting to the amendment?
I have questions if we're still on the amendment.
Can ask. Questions are in order. What's before us right this moment is the amendment. If the amendment is accepted, then the amendment can be added to the bill now.
Okay. But I guess my question, the councilman just gave a lengthy, informative statement, which sounded like the bill, and I wasn't sure which aspect of that was the actual, where she was speaking to the amendment. And if you could just share what time the amendment was circulated?
Councilmember Bonds?
Yes, the amendment that was circulated a little earlier today is an amendment that
He asked what time. It circulated right before 10 a.m., I
I-
believe.
I don't know the times. Okay, it was circulated before 10 a.m. today.
Heard somebody say 9:56. You know, it might be easier if, is this going on non-consent? Mr. McDuffie, you want the bill on non-consent?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get up to speed on whether the amendment, I hadn't seen it yet, Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman, so, but this doesn't speak to the amount of employers. I think that was already in the,
All right, I'm gonna, instead of doing the amendment here, we'll do it at the legislative meeting. If there are no other questions, we'll have this on non-consent. If there are no other questions, we'll get to discuss this at the legislative meeting. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is no cost.
This measure will be removed from the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next two measures were reported out of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. The first is Bill 25-136, Golden Triangle Business Improvement District Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 25-163 amends the Business Improvement Districts Act of 1996 to authorize revised bid tax rates within the Golden Triangle bid. The new bid tax rate will increase from 17 cents per net rentable square foot to 19 cents for improved Class 2 and Class 3 property, excluding hotels. For hotels, the tax will increase from 14.5 cents to 16 cents per net rentable square foot. Non-exempt Class 1 residential properties will be taxed at $163 per unit per year, which is an increase from $120. Council approved emergency and temporary legislation along these lines earlier this year, and these increases are meant to help the bid both keep up with inflation and help with its continuing work in redeveloping downtown. Leona Argaritas and her team have led the bid through the challenging years of the pandemic, and these necessary changes will help support their important ongoing work in making downtown a welcoming place for residents, workers, and visitors. With that, I move that the bill be placed on the consent agenda for the ledge meeting today.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Does it have a fiscal impact?
No.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. Bill 25-130, Bill 25-149. Again, 25-149, Friendship Heights Business Improvement District Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. The Friendship Heights Business Improvement District Amendment Act of 2023 would permanently establish a new Friendship Heights Business Improvement District to operate in conjunction with the neighboring Friendship Heights Urban District recently created by Montgomery County, Maryland. Councilmember Fruman has helped lead this effort along with key community and business stakeholders. The Friendship Heights Business Improvement District is the 12th bid operating in the District of Columbia. The bill establishes a tax rate of 16.5 cents for each net rentable square foot for Class 2 properties, excluding hotels. Hotels will be taxed at $120 per room annually. Non-exempt Class 1 residential properties with 5 or more residential units would also be taxed at $120 per unit. And before I move this measure, I want to briefly address the racial equity impact analysis for this bill, which concludes that Bill 25-149 would exacerbate racial inequity in the District of Columbia. This conclusion is not because of anything specific to the Friendship Heights bid, which the RIA acknowledges would not uniquely worsen racial equity in the district, but because of broader concerns of entrenched and persisting racial inequities in the District of Columbia. The RIA argues that the existing bid system is a key cause of those inequities. And as chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, and as somebody who's lived here my entire life and cares deeply about equity and opportunity for Black and other district residents of color, the tension between the economic growth and equity are often on my mind. And so I agree, while I disagree, I should say, with some of the conclusions of the RIA, I do believe that these overarching concerns about the bid system that it raises, including how we can make it operate more equitably for the benefit of Black residents and residents of color, deserve another conversation that is not centered around this specific Friendship Heights bid. Instead of delaying this measure today, the committee is going to take up and evaluate some of the RIA's recommendations in a separate effort outside of this today. But I wanted to just lift that up and the concerns that have been raised by the RIA. And I've also had concerns with some of the other colleagues who share some of the concerns that I've just raised. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move the bill be placed on the consent agenda for the legislative meeting today.
Thank you, Councilman McDuffie. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without, is there a fiscal impact?
No.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The last measure from other committees is Bill 25-218, the Work Order Integrity Amendment Act of 2023, reported out of the Committee on Facilities and Family Services. Councilmember Janice Lewis-George.
Thank you, Chairman. I was proud to introduce Bill 25-218, the Work Order Integrity Amendment Act of 2023, with unanimous support of the full council earlier this year on March 16th, 2023. I just want to take a moment to thank my colleagues, most of whom have joined me on at least one facilities readiness tour this year after being leading facilities or having oversight over DGS this year. This has been a major focus of mine, and I really appreciate getting your support to dig deep on this. We work together on this, and I'm grateful for your partnership to help improve facility maintenance in our public schools. I also want to thank all the PTOs, the principals, the foremans, the WTU members who participated in our school readiness tours earlier this year. Together, we visited at least one school in all 8 wards earlier this summer. We observed some systemic issues related to entering, tracking, and managing work orders, which we will fix within this bill. We are also doing a lot to improve quality assurance over DGS's work in our schools and persistent issues from our tours. Here's what this bill does. First, it codifies requirements that DGS train school-based staff in the use of Salesforce at least once every year. Salesforce is DGS's computerized maintenance management system, and every end user must know how to use it to enter, track, and manage work orders if we are going to be successful in facilities for our schools. Second, it codifies requirements that DGS work with DCPS to update Salesforce notification emails at least once annually. This was an issue we highlighted in our fiscal year 2024 budget report and has since now been resolved. But this is something DCPS and DGS must continue to work on together in the future. A lot of our foremans at the schools were not getting notifications, and we found out the email list was so old from years ago. And so that was stopping some of the issues that we were having, some of the issues we were seeing with not getting notified and not saying this work order has not been complete. Third, it codifies that DGS must include a space in Salesforce for school-based staff to share feedback on work order completion. This process is already in existence now, but we believe it's important that this be made permanent, so this line of communication between schools and DGS remains open. Finally, it requires a DGS representative review work orders marked complete, but not reviewed by a DCPS staff member during the 14-day feedback window. We believe that this is a helpful compromise that allows DGS to pay its vendors on time, but also to ensure robust quality control. The Committee on Facilities and Family Services plans to continue its focus on DGS quality control process and performance oversight and budget hearings this upcoming spring. I also appreciate Director Hunter for embracing many of these reforms early on in his tenure at DGS. This bill codifies several improvements so they won't change or drift away under new leadership. With that, I request that this resolution be placed on the consent agenda of our upcoming legislative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. We have the bill before us. Are there questions? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does. And there's no fiscal impact.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. That's going to conclude the business for this committee of the whole. The next committee of the whole meeting is regularly scheduled for December 19th at 11 a.m. We will start the legislative meeting at 2:25, or at least I will be here. Mr. Taylor, I will be here at 2:25. It's 2:18. This meeting's adjourned. We're gonna get some heat. I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a regular legislative meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. It's the 17th legislative meeting of Council Period 25. Today is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. The time is 2:25 in the afternoon. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council, and we always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence. I would ask if everyone in the chamber would respect that we have a moment of silence for reflection. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Allen,
Here?
Councilmember Bonds,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Nadell.
Here.
Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. You heard Councilmember Pinto say she was present.
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nyasha.
She
Sorry
was
about that. I'm
Off
present.
microphone, but we could hear her in the chamber.
Thank you.
We have the Secretary's report of committee filings. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Mr. McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
Been a motion to waive the reading of the Secretary's report of committee filings. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals. Is there Mr. McDuffie, I recognize you.
Yes, and I will move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals.
So a motion to waive the reading of the log. Is there discussion?
Point of clarity.
Yes, Mr. White.
I just want to have a point of clarity for interim director Thany Freeman. She is a resident of Ward 7. I believe I said Ward 8, but I know for a fact she's a Ward 7 resident. I want to give clarity on that for public record.
All right, thank you. Is there discussion on further discussion on the motion to waive the reading of the log? By a voice vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any noes? The ayes have it unanimously. Turn to the consent agenda. These are my notes. On page 3, under first reading, Bill 25-540, which is item C1, is removed from the agenda, not just from the consent agenda, but removed from the agenda because it was not moved in the committee of the whole. Item 4, which is now known as the Wage Transparency Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023, Bill 25-194, is removed from the consent agenda, but remains on the agenda. And I believe those are the only changes. Nope. And on page 6, under reading and vote on proposed resolutions, item E2, Board of Library Trustees Maria Peace Confirmation Resolution 2023. That's PR 25-474 is removed from the consent agenda. Those are the only changes that I know of. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda? We have the consent agenda as amended before us. There'll be a roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. And Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Turning to page 3, item C4. That's Bill 25-194. Now, the bill is now known as the Wage Transparency Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Today I'm moving amendment number 1 to the Wage Transparency Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023, which is Bill 25-194. This amendment seeks to amend the definition of employer by amending the employer size cap from 25 or more employees to no employer cap. It is found in section 2A, line 36, page 2, by striking paragraph 3, which speaks to cap language. Furthermore, the amendment seeks to create an additional provision that should an employer not provide a prospective employee with the Act's disclosure, then the prospective employee may inquire about the information by and through the amending of section 2C and adding the new section line 70 on page 3. The purpose of this amendment is to conform to existing law and not disrupt the pre-existing protections provided by the Wage Transparency Act of 2014. As stewards of the law, it's our duty to ensure that our amendments bolster pre-existing code, not remove protections that have already been voted on and enacted in our law. And therefore, the Wage Transparency Act of 2014 prohibits the employers from discharging, disciplining, or retaliating against employees who discuss employee wages or the wage of another employee. Additionally, employers are prohibited from restricting employees from lodging complaints, testifying, or participating in an investigation or proceedings related to the act. And therefore, by amending the Wage Transparency Act of 2014, employer definition is to contain an employer size limitation would remove protections afforded by the current law for any employer outside of the range. And this bill requires employers to disclose wage information to prospective employees and prohibits them from inquiring about a prospective employee's salary history. Clearly, transparency also reduces gender and racial wage gaps where data overwhelmingly illustrates persistent systemic pay inequities. Taking these steps will allow the district to join 14 other states and localities that are trailblazing the nation with pay transparency laws. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment number 1 to the amended Wage Transparency Amendment Act of 2023. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilmember Bonds. So implicitly by moving the amendment, you've moved the bill. We have the bill and the amendment before us. With regard to the amendment, is there discussion? Councilmember Allen, then Councilmember.
Yes. And you can put me in the lineup, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to Councilmember Bonds. I am supporting this amendment and I want to thank her for moving this language via the amendment. When we look back at our 2014 law, the council passed that to help protect our workers. In particular, thinking about how do we help our workers and especially those in vulnerable spaces be able to help organize, and the ability to create a prohibition against employers acting against employees for disclosing their salary is removing that protection would be a very anti-labor step. I think Councilor Bond's amendment addresses that very clearly, and I appreciate her moving this because I think it is a protection that is important to the District of Columbia and is part of our values. And so I really appreciate that. I know there may be some conversation around exactly whether all the other provisions should apply for employers at 10 or more or less, or 25 or more or less. I'm not going to wade into that at this moment. I do think, though, that no matter if there are changes, for example, between first and second reading, I would hope that we make sure we maintain this aspect, which is to ensure that these protections for our workers are there regardless of employer size. So I'm supporting Councilor Bond's amendment today, and I appreciate her taking this step to make sure that we are protecting the integrity of our law that was passed already in 2014. Thank you, Ms. Bonds.
Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you so much, Councilor Bonds, for moving this bill today. The gender pay gap in our country continues to leave behind women, especially women of color. For every $1 that white men earn, Black women earn only 70 cents, Hispanic women earn only 65 cents, and women overall earn only 82 cents on the dollar. By requiring disclosure of minimum and maximum projected wages, non-wage compensation, and schedules of benefits to prospective employees, this bill takes an extremely important step in reducing the employment and pay equity barriers too many of our residents encounter on a daily basis. Many studies have shown that wage transparency laws like this one can help reduce the gender pay gap. And we hear anecdotally from so many women and women of color who aren't given the same access to information at the time of applying to a job or don't think to ask. So I want to thank you again, Councilor Bonds, for your leadership on this issue and think that this is a really important measure. I do want to note, as I think about the practical implications of this bill and how it could affect not just businesses, small and large, but individuals who seek to employ somebody, perhaps an individual seeking to hire a dog walker and posting on a neighborhood board, posting on Facebook about a service they may need in their home. I think many residents would be surprised to learn that they would need to post a similar type of range. And so I hope to have some more conversations and work with you between first and second reading on just hammering out how we can ensure that this is protecting workers, reducing the pay gap, and also is going to be workable for residents across the District of Columbia, many of whom may have ad hoc services that they're seeking for themselves and their families. But thank you in advance for those continued conversations.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Councilmember Barnes for all your work on this bill. I know that you and your team have really put a lot into this, and as the author of the original wage transparency bill in 2014, it's important to me, as I know it is to you, that we do everything we can as the legislative body of the District of Columbia to eliminate any issues to the pay disparities that exist across gender in the District of Columbia. I will say I had originally voted on this at markup when it was a different bill. There were concerns raised with the changes that the new amendment makes in the breakfast and earlier. And since this is I think a fairly significant change with this amendment that is before us right now, it really means that a vote on this bill in favor of it means it'd be a change that affects every business in the district when it is used to the original underlying bill and markup, I believe, only affected businesses with 25 or more employees. I know that during the hearing, there were some concerns raised from people in the business community about the original bill. I appreciate some of the modifications you made along the way. And I can't see the clock, so I'm going to try to limit how much I'm talking about this right now. But I had asked during the markup a clarifying question about the intent of the bill. The question was whether the bill meant to list the structure of the schedule of benefits or just the existence of bonuses. And you mentioned that it was the latter. I think this bill is still unclear on that, actually. And now, since the bill affects every single business in the District of Columbia that hires employees of one or more employees, this still needs to be clarified to the point that it doesn't confuse businesses, small businesses in particular. And I think before second reading, if we can continue to work with you and your team to address that so that it's crystal clear for small business community who, especially the ones under 25 who were originally not a part of this bill and likely did not testify because they weren't going to be included. I think it'll be important to make sure their voice is captured and we can achieve the goal that is sought by this. And so I look forward to working with you between now and second reading to try to address those concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. Further on the bill. Actually, further on the amendment. We have the amendment before us. By a voice vote, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The amendment is approved unanimously. We have the bill as amended. Is there further discussion? Madam Secretary, do you recommend a roll call vote?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Well, then please call the roll. The
Councilmember,
vote is on Bill 25-194 as amended.
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. And Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The bill is approved unanimously. Turning to page 6. Under proposed resolutions, item E2, PR 25-474, Board of Library Trustees, Maria Peace, confirmation resolution of 2023. Councilmember Trahan White.
So move.
Discussion. Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be voting present on this nominee. I do not sit on this committee, but I did reach out and have had the opportunity yet to speak to the candidate regarding her interest and tenure for serving on the library board. As you know, Ward 4 has had particular issues and interest regarding libraries and communication and transparency with our ANC commissioners and neighborhood associations. And so as such, as we look at issues with our Juanita Thornton Library in Shepherd Park, as well as the Kennedy Street Library, because I have not had the opportunity to speak with the candidate regarding the importance of communication and transparency with our neighbors, with our ANC commissioners and neighborhood associations. I'll be voting present on the matter today in the hopes that that conversation can be had and we will see an improvement for the Ward 4 community and its leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the resolution, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also going to be voting present on this nomination. I don't think I would be as skeptical about this if we hadn't had a nominee earlier this year who also had some questionable not questionable. There was a nominee for the library board earlier this year who not only had no library card, but also was known to support book banning efforts that got withdrawn. And so I'm not saying that this nominee is any parts of that, but I feel like for a central question of whether or not you have a library card or have you been to your neighborhood library, those are things that I couldn't glean from the documents from the committee. As Councilmember Lewis George said, haven't had an opportunity to connect with the nominee. So I'm gonna vote present today.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Further?
Chairman, I also want to note for the public record, there was a question asked about the library card. And to my knowledge, I just received a message that Ms. Peace did have a library card as late as high school and haven't had one since. If that gives clarity to the members who asked that question.
Councilmember White, Councilmember White, I have a question for you. Did you have a hearing on this nomination?
Yes, I did.
And was there any opposition expressed at the hearing?
There was no opposition of pressure to hearing.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Can
The
I just ask
vote,
to make sure I heard that right? Apologize. She hasn't had a library card since high school?
That's correct.
if there's no further discussion. There's no further discussion. Madam Secretary, would you prefer a roll call to a voice vote?
A voice vote should suffice on this.
All right,
Wait a minute, that's a roll call.
who would say that again?
Roll call.
Councilmember Lewis George has requested a roll call. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Bonds.
Sorry.
Present.
Councilmember Bonds will be recorded as present. Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Freeman will be recorded as present. Councilmember Gray.
Here. Present.
Councilmember Gray, is that a yes or a present?
That's a yes.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Gray Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
I'm voting no.
Councilmember Henderson votes no. Councilmember Lewis George.
Present.
Councilmember Lewis George will be recorded as present. Councilmember McDuffie. Councilmember McDuffie. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
No.
Councilmember Parker votes no. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
No.
Councilmember Robert White votes no. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
No.
Councilmember Allen votes no. Mr. Chairman, is Councilmember McDuffie back? Councilmember McDuffie? Councilmember McDuffie is absent. Mr. Chairman, there are 5 yeses, 4 nos, 3 presents, and 1 absent.
We should have a spread like this on every vote. There are 5 yeses and 4 nos. The resolution is approved. Continuing with the non-consent agenda, on page 7, we have emergency legislation. And the first is the Green Housing Transition Extension Emergency. The declaration resolution is PR 25-545. Councilmember Robert White.
Chairman, I'm sorry, on the last vote, I counted 4 yeses. I'm just trying to get, was it 5? Okay, thank you. All right, sorry,
I will say more, but that's not because it's in order to question the decision since the vote has been announced. But Councilmember Gray, myself, Nadeau, Pinto, and Trayon White voted yes. And Councilmember Robert White. You have the floor with regard to PR 25-545.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I apologize. I didn't have my statement up. Yeah.
Clearly, that last vote took a toll. Thank you for the drama.
There we are. Thank you again, Chairman. By the end of 2026, the Department of Energy and Environment and Department of Buildings are required to put out a new net zero energy code. It will require most new or substantially renovated buildings in DC to consume less electricity than they produce through renewable sources. This approach requires additional investment in things like better insulation and energy efficient systems, but it's worth it because we absolutely have to do our part to slow the devastating effects of climate change. Now, the net zero mandates coming online in a few years will apply to all major building efforts, including private ones. But local advocates have made a compelling case that our government buildings should lead the way. That's why I introduced the Greener Government Buildings Amendment Act of 2022, which we passed last year. It accelerates the net zero timeline for projects that we own or fund. This summer, Councilmember Louis George and her team worked hard to line up funding for my Greener Government Buildings bill, so it became applicable on October 1st. But as we wrapped up the budget process, our housing finance agencies and the executive branch started raising concerns about affordable housing projects that were already very far along in the development process. They explained imposing a net zero mandate on these projects at the last minute after years of development would mean sending them back to the drawing board. It would delay the construction and preservation of affordable housing that we desperately need. Therefore, this June, we unanimously passed emergency and temporary legislation saying that residential projects that receive funding commitments before the end of this calendar year wouldn't have to achieve net zero compliance after all. Today, I'm moving what amounts to a technical correction. It turns out we need the exemption to roll through the end of March 2024 instead of December 2023, since some of these projects we're trying to grandfather in still need to secure funding from the DC Housing Finance Agency. So you're all aware, the mayor's administration has also been meeting with my team and Councilmember Allen's staff with the Committee on Transportation and the Environment about a longer-term modification to the Greener Government Building Law. They're arguing that it would be better if none of the affordable housing projects in our financing pipeline for the next 3 years had to meet net zero standards. I expect the mayor will seek to introduce legislation to that effect in the coming weeks, but my team and I are working with the administration and consulting with outside experts and environmental experts to see if we can find a more tailored solution. For now, I move the Green Housing Transition Extension Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.
I'm here.
We
We have
never
the
got-
declaration before us.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Councilman Allen?
Thank you. I want to thank Councilmember White and your staff for working on this to ensure the bill is effective, but also narrow in its scope. I know that we're going to see a permanent measure soon, and while I do understand the difficulty of financing affordable housing as construction costs and interest rates have risen over the last few years, we also know that green housing is not incompatible with affordable housing. Last Friday, as the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, I took a tour of 3 projects that the Green Bank has helped finance in our city. I went to Fairfax Village, where they were able to install a massive solar array that generates about $6 million in rent and reduced utility costs for those residents. That's allowing the association to keep its fees flat for the last 3 years in a neighborhood that's been hit hard by the pandemic. I also visited a great infill development project on 22nd Street Southeast in Ward 8 that's going to add affordable units to a neighborhood in a building that's going to be fully electric, using innovative materials and building techniques. It's a small development company that's owned by a native Washingtonian who's staying on the cutting edge. And then I went and saw the early stages of what's going to be an amazing Jubilee housing development in Ward 1, a building that will be all electric and will even include an aquaponics facility. The building will have transitional and permanent housing for returning citizens and will provide them with job training, meals, and support. These projects all layer a lot of different type of housing subsidy programs available in the district, but they all include forward-thinking green features. And we need to support our thriving affordable housing developers in the district, and we need to push all of our building industry to stay on the cutting edge of green building. Those two goals are not mutually exclusive, and I look forward to working with Councilmember White and the Housing Committee to continue to help strike that right balance for the District of Columbia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion? We have the declaration before us, PR 25-545. Councilmember, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fruman,
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie,
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson,
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker,
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White,
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. And Councilmember Bonds,
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-588. Councilmember White,
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote. Votes on Bill 25-588. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let's try again. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-549, Streetery Program Extension Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move this declaration and then I'll move the bill later. I move this declaration on June 30th, 2022, the Reopen Washington, D.C. Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Amendment Act of 2022 took effect, which allows the APCA licensed establishments that register with the board to offer beer, wine, or spirits for sale on expanded outdoor space until December 31st, 2023. As of October 17th of this year, there are currently 178 licensed establishments that have registered and possess temporary streetery program endorsements from the board that will expire on December 31st, 2023. On October 11th, 2023, the District Department of Transportation announced the extension of the temporary streetery program permits through December 31st, 2024 to allow DDOT more time to develop regulations and guidelines needed to facilitate a permanent streetery program. The Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration is currently working on the legislation that would amend Title 25 of the DC Code to create a permanent streetery program endorsement. APCA is also working collaboratively with DDOT on a permanent streetery program. The interim emergency legislation is necessary to extend the streetery program for an additional year, while permanent legislation is considered by the council. With that, I would move the deck.
Councilman McDuffie, you were done?
Yes, I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Councilmember McDuffie. the Streetery program has allowed many of our businesses to survive the pandemic. We would have seen many more restaurant closures had we not opened up the ability for outdoor dining and allow them to really flourish under difficult circumstances. And over time, I think so many residents have really enjoyed having the ability to dine outside in these streeteries. It's helped restaurants bring staff back to work, hire more people at a critical time for employment, helped folks who are living here or visiting the district have additional avenues to support our restaurants and enjoy themselves. And I intend to support this emergency legislation, but I do think it's essential that we keep a sense of urgency around the promulgation of the regulations for our streetery program. This program we first came up with in 2020 in this emergency environment that I articulated. Year after year, we have told residents and businesses regulations are coming. Last year, I promised residents and businesses that regulations would be here this year. We're now nearing the end of 2023. We still haven't seen the regulations from DDOT. And, you know, if those regulations come and the ABCA component of determining liquor licenses goes along with that, that's great. But in terms of determining how we're utilizing this public space, thinking about consistency, aesthetics, alternatives, if every location is the best location for a streetery, we cannot continue to tell residents, okay, we're in 2025 and we haven't come up with regulations for 5 years for a program that was adopted in an emergency time. And so I will support this today because it's focused on the ABCA component, and I don't want to hold up the endorsements of these businesses receiving what they need. But I do want to make sure we all continue to be mindful that time is of the essence here, and we really can't be casual about the very real impact that these streeteries have on businesses and residents. And so I look forward to seeing those regulations very soon and ensuring that we have a robust public process of engagement moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Further discussion, Councilmember Trayon White?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm going to support this measure today to bring regulations to the streeteries in the District of Columbia. I just want to make it a point that I believe that the streeteries served this useful life as relates to the pandemic, giving people opportunities to still dine and still socialize during an environment where we're in the height of the pandemic. But I'm also cautious about the number of parking spaces that have been removed from the district. I sent a letter to DDOT trying to get an accurate number of parking spaces taken away from the bus lanes to the new road refigurations to the streeteries, to all the different things we've done in the city in the last 10 years, and they don't have that data. So, I know that this is one of the many ways that parking is taken away, especially in the business corridors and some of the communities. And so I'm going to support this measure and bring in regulations, but I will look forward to hearing more from DDOT about where do people park when they want to patronize these businesses and go get a haircut, right, in our city. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Fruman?
Thank you, Chairman Mendelson. I'm gonna second the sentiment that Councilmember Pinto expressed. I mean, many of our streeteries are great. Some of our streeteries have devolved into nuisances, and we need to get these regulations out so that we can have uniformity in how it's done, have predictability. It has been a long time, and we should, as a council, think about what we can do to try to encourage the executive to release the proposed regulations and have an engagement process around them. We can't go, this is going to be a theme on a couple of different things. We can't go on forever extending emergencies. We need to get to a permanent solution on this, and that requires the executive to release the proposed regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilor McDuffie, for helping ensure we have the continuation of what I think is an essential program. The Streetery program was a lifesaver for many restaurants during the pandemic. It's also a lifesaver for a lot of jobs and keeping people employed during the height of that pandemic. And what I think is beyond the pandemic, though, it has also turned into an incredible success story of what happens when we shift public space from asphalt to vibrant, active public uses. I hope that we can learn from the successes of the streeteries that we've installed so far and then work to extend that success further. The new regulations are going to create a specific type of public space permit for streeteries and a more clear authority for permitting and being able to review them, rather than what we have today, which is just, as we've talked about, a holdover of an old, outdated public space permit that dates back to the pandemic. My understanding is that those proposed regulations have been put forward by DDOT to the executive office, and that we are waiting for EOM to be able to release them and then have regulations come out. So I think both in our conversations this morning during the breakfast meeting, as well as here, we encourage those for momentum on that and for the executive to be able to release those regulations so that we can take these next steps for our businesses, for our jobs, and for our neighborhoods. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. If there's no further discussion, we have the declaration before us, PR 25-549. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-593. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll have a voice vote. This is on Bill 25-593. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-538. People's Council Holdover Extension Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Can you hear me, Mr.?
I heard you say, can I hear you? I haven't heard anything else you've said.
Okay, perfect. I think you can hear me. All right, thank you. The current People's Council, Sandra Madhavu-Fry, has a term that expired in June. Since then, she's been serving in a holdover capacity, and by law, that holdover period is set to expire on or about December 10th of this year. Ms. Madhavu-Fry was renominated by the mayor on November 1st, and the confirmation resolution was referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on November 7th. This timeline did not provide adequate time for the committee and the council to review and act on her nomination before the current allowable holdover period expires. The committee will hold a confirmation roundtable on Ms. Madhavu-Fry's nomination on January 11th of 2024. In the interim, however, emergency legislation is necessary to extend her holdover term while a confirmation resolution is considered by the council. Preserving the continuity of the People's Council term of office is vital to the district, as there are several important rate cases before the Public Service Commission, numerous climate-related proceedings, and water and energy litigation before the Court of Appeals that could be disrupted if there was a vacancy. With that, I move the deck.
Thank you, Councilman McDuffie. Is there discussion? Mr. McDuffie, I have several questions for you. When did Ms. Madhavu-Fry's term expire?
The term is set to, well, I'll have to get you the exact date. Well, the holdover period is, you mean the original term, Mr. Chairman, or are you talking about the holdover period?
Oh, she's holding over. When did her term expire?
I can get you that date. I don't have it It was at some point in June, but I'd have to get you the exact date. If I had known before this point, I would have researched the exact date, but it was in June.
Madam General Counsel, do you know the date it expired?
Looking it up. Oh, thanks. But it
Staff's
was-
looking it up right now. The councilman was correct. It is in June.
It was in June. All right, when
June
did,
13th, June 13th, I believe.
when did the mayor send out, so her term expired June 13th. When did
Yes.
the mayor send down the legislation?
I understand it was November 1st. It was referred to the committee on November 7th. I think I get at the point you're making
So it was about 4.5 months after the term ended.
for renomination. Yes.
Of course, it wasn't a secret when the term was going to end. And the committee has scheduled a hearing on her nomination.
A roundtable on January 11th of next year.
Thank you.
And as I'm sure you're aware, Ms. Madawu enjoys lots of support. And again, this is not a new nominee, it's a renomination, which speaks both to, I think, getting it in a more timely fashion, but also the likelihood that it will be supported and passed.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Are there any other questions or discussion from members? We have the declaration before us, PR 25-538. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie,
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson,
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker,
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White,
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds,
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-582. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on the bill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes? I don't hear any no votes. The bill is approved unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-539. Adjustment of building restriction line in square 2950 along the southern side of Fern Street Northwest. It says here SR, but I think that means SO 23-06301, Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Lewis George.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Today I am moving a small and technical emergency measure that would allow very important housing development to move forward on the Walter Reed campus. The adjustment of building restriction line in square 2950 along the southern side of Fern Street Northwest, SR 23-06301, Emergency Act of 2023, will make a small adjustment in the building restriction line from 15 feet to 9.5 feet. The change is needed because the original records provided to the developer showed this section of the campus did not have a building restriction line. In October, the developer was informed that that was a 15-foot restriction, a restriction that would have caused the entire section of the development to literally go back to the drawing board. Rather than starting over and throwing away the development behind many months, the developer worked with DC agencies and the advisory neighborhood commissioners to make a slight adjustment in the building restriction line. Mr. Chairman, if there's no objection, I would like to move the resolution so that this much needed housing development can move forward on schedule.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. Is there discussion? Thank you. I just want to state for the record that generally, since building restriction lines are something that come under the committee of the whole, we don't favor removals or changes to building restriction lines, but there was a a lack of clarity in the records. It was not discovered until long after building permits had been issued, as I understand it. It was a plat from the 1970s.
Yes.
Our office or the committee staff in discussing this with the surveyor's office found that there was a feeling that there had been a mistake and that this change was not a problem. So I'll be voting for this. I just wanted to say that for the record. And you've also provided quite a bit of background material, which is helpful.
Thank you.
And permanent bill's been introduced and we will have a hearing on it. If there's no other discussion, the vote will be on PR 25-539. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-583. Councilmember Lewis George.
So moved.
Discussion. Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll have a voice vote. Vote is on Bill 25-583. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-555. Retired firefighter and police officer redeployment emergency declaration resolution of 2023. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill would grant firefighters retired from the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department and police officers who are retired from the Metropolitan Police Department eligibility for rehire at the discretion of the Director of the Office of Unified Communication as a temporary full-time or temporary part-time 911 call taker or 911 dispatcher without decreasing their retirement benefits. OUC has struggled in recent years to maintain minimum staffing levels. Currently, OUC has 13 vacant call taker positions and is interviewing for 15 open dispatcher positions. In October 2023, as many of you know, 30 of the 67 911 call taker and dispatcher shifts did not meet the staffing targets. This was also the case for the 26 out of 64 shifts in the September 2023 and for 26 out of the 66 shifts from this past August. Call wait times also continue to exceed targets. In November of 2023, fewer than half of the 911 calls were answered in the 15 seconds or less on 4 days. OUC needs additional staffing. They also need a broad recruitment pool. Applicant groups of 400 people can result in as few as 200 hires due to some of the rigorous nature of the application process. Retired firefighters and police officers would be excellent additions to OUC's 911 operations, but are deterred from applying to work there under the status quo. Currently, any district government employee who is collecting pension benefits and is rehired by another district agency is subject to an annuity offset. This bill would allow MPD and FEMS retirees to collect both salary as a temporary 911 call taker or dispatcher in addition to their full pension annuity. Firefighters and police officers would bring the experience, the expertise and knowledge that they have acquired over decades on the front lines of emergency response into the heart of OUC operations, including their knowledge of the city's geography, their medical expertise, and innate knowledge of the information that firefighters and police officers value from dispatchers when reporting and responding to a call on a scene. Consider too that MPD and FEMS are eligible to retire at 25 years. A retired fighter, fire, or police officer could be as young as 50 and have a desire to continue to serve the community. I'm moving this bill with the support of FEMS, MPD, OUC. And I also want to thank the DC Firefighters Association for bringing this need and attention to my office and working with me on this legislation. I urge my colleagues to support.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be enthusiastically supporting this legislation today and want to thank Councilor Henderson and her team for working on this important issue with what I think is a really creative solution to address some of the challenges that we're seeing with staffing at OUC. I've spoken a lot this year about the need to address staffing shortages at our public safety agencies, including at OUC, which has had significant vacancies in recent years. These vacancies have had significant impacts on OUC's ability to perform its critical public safety function. Short staffing has no doubt contributed to errors and impacted the agency's ability to meet national standards for call answer and dispatch times. Short staffing also potentially has harmful impacts on the agency's ability to retain current staff who are chronically overworked. This emergency legislation will provide an important tool to address staffing issues at OUC, and in doing so will help improve public safety outcomes. I do want to note as a follow-up to some of the emergency OUC hearing that we had earlier this fall, that training and filling up some of these vacancies is ongoing, and there should be significant progress made in the next several months with the next training class completed by this January with the geographic training that they need to get set up. But FEMS and MPD firefighters and officers who have this type of expertise of working in our city, know where things are, know what it's like on the ground to be dispatched and respond to these incidents, have a unique perspective to lend. And I think as we weigh ways to help, it's much better that somebody get paid a little extra and be able to continue serving than worry about the pension excluding their paycheck. So I'm thrilled about this bill. I think it will make a real impact. And so I want to again thank you, Councilmember Henderson, and look forward to getting this passed today.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. When a person calls 911 for a medical emergency, fire, or crime, they need to know that someone will pick up the phone, that the dispatcher will understand what their emergency is and dispatch it correctly, and that they will receive help quickly. This is one of the most fundamental responsibilities of district government and something that is critical to improving public safety. The Office of Unified Communications, the 911 call center that residents of the district and our first responders rely on, is dangerously understaffed. The office reported that in October, 45% of shifts, nearly half, did not meet the staffing target. Staffing is an issue, as we know, at other agencies, including MPD, where even significant bonuses and other incentives approved by the council are not enough to fill positions with qualified officers, and the crime lab too. The bottom line is that staffing in many of our public safety agencies is a challenge, and the district must look at recruitment and staffing in innovative ways to supplement the traditional methods that have been used. I proposed legislation last week that would use 911 call center staff more efficiently, transferring fire and emergency medical calls to a new fire and EMS call center for better effectiveness and efficiency. That legislation will cost money and will take time to implement. Councilmember Henderson's proposed legislation is another way to fill the ranks at OUC, and because it doesn't cost anything, has the advantage of being something the council can do now to make a positive change. Retired first responders are exactly the experts and committed public servants we need to supplement overworked 911 call takers and dispatchers. This exemption would give OUC access to a new pool of candidates who would help the 911 center maintain minimum staffing levels for 911 call takers and dispatchers and bring the expertise and knowledge that they acquired over decades on the front lines. I will be voting yes on this bill, and I also want to continue working on ways to recruit for all of our public safety agencies and pursuing changes to how agencies operate that can reduce the burden on employees and result in stronger outcomes for the people of the District of Columbia. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councilmember Henderson, for moving this forward. I'm enthusiastically going to be supporting this. There's not a week that goes by that I don't hear from constituents in my ward that have called 911 and they're put on hold. They can't get through. It has happened to me. waiting minutes while I watched a building catch fire. It is unacceptable and it's dangerous. I think that an effort like this can only be a net positive of being able to create more people that can be eligible to take on these crucially important roles. When we look at the stats of 40% of the shifts in October being understaffed, 30% the month before that, those are sobering numbers. Now, this council has also added resources to OUC for recruitment and retention. So I think it is incumbent upon the agencies and the executive to be able to utilize this new tool. And I think that I know with the committee, we'll be keeping a close eye of oversight of how they're actually implementing this. Because we've seen those resources, for example, for recruitment and retention support, not get out the door and not get to the call takers the way that we want to. So I think this is a very innovative and useful tool to be able to help expand the pool of eligibility. I hope that we see it translate into filling more of those staff positions. And so I'm very much in support of this. Appreciate the partnership that you've got to make sure this happens, and we'll be enthusiastically supporting this and hope to see that it makes a difference.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to add my appreciation to Councilmember Henderson for this legislation. I think it brings very welcome and likely expertise to this issue where we know that the Unified Call Center is relatively challenged. And so thank you very much for that. Bringing a resource that can really make a difference to our firefighters, our part of our first responders community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to voting in favor of this measure. Having people answer our 911 system when people call is one of the most basic aspects of a public safety infrastructure. It doesn't matter how many laws we pass if people are left on hold or not getting an answer when they call 911. We have a broken public safety system. That's one of the reasons that I tried to address our call center as one of the aspects of my whole of government approach to crime bill. And I think that this will help make sure we have people in place that calls get answered, and so that we have a public safety infrastructure that we can build on top of, which we don't have right now. So I appreciate the efforts in this bill, and I look forward to voting in favor.
Thank you, Councilmember White. We have the declaration before us, PR 25-555. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill before us, Bill 25-602. Councilmember White. Excuse me, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention for the record that we did introduce a permanent version of this bill, and I look forward to consideration of that going forward, but so moved on the emergency.
We have the bill before us. Is there discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on the bill. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The bill's approved unanimously. The next measure is Fidelity in Electronic Communications, Second Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023, PR 25-554. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The council first voted on this issue on March 1, 2022, when they unanimously passed the Fidelity in Access to Government Communications Clarification Emergency Amendment Act of 2022. The Emergency Act was passed after a concerning report regarding the executive's use of WhatsApp Messenger was published online. Among many features available within the application is the ability to auto delete messages after a set period of time. On April 4th, 2023, the council unanimously passed the Fidelity and Access to Government Communications Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2023 to clarify that all communications created or received electronically in the course of official business are subject to existing record retention obligations. The current temporary act is set to expire on the 25th of January, 2024. Emergency legislation is therefore necessary to ensure that existing record retention guidelines continue to apply to a wide variety of electronic communications and to ensure public access to information is not diminished or compromised. And that is why we are moving this emergency and temporary today. Thank you, Chairman. I move the bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. We have the declaration before us. Discussion? The vote will be on PR 25-554. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Tran White.
Yes.
Councilmember Tran White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Councilmember Pinto. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
I have not announced a vote yet. Madam Secretary, there was 1 absent.
Yes, Councilmember Pinto.
Madam Secretary, I'm here. My vote is yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-600. Councilmember Bonds.
Again, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Today, I'm urging my colleagues to support the hotel enhanced cleaning and notice of service disruption, second emergency and temporary.
Chairman.
Councilmember Bonds, Bill 25-600, Fidelity and Electronic Communications.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have the bill before us. Is there
Thank you.
discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll deal with the bill by a voice vote. On Bill 25-600, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That was anemic. Let's try again. All those in favor of the bill say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for that participation. The next measure is PR 25-553, Hotel Cleaning and Notice of Service Interruption Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm urging my colleagues to support the Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Second Emergency and Temporary Amendment Act of 2023, thus allowing this important employment measure to continue as the concerned parties, that is, the hotel industry and our union sisters and brothers, negotiate a permanent solution outside of the glare and regulations of government. Earlier this year, in February, the council passed the Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Emergency and Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. The emergency legislation authorized the mayor to issue regulations that establish requirements for cleaning and maintaining DCs, the hotels and motels, and to establish standards for public notice of lodging establishment service disruptions. The emergency and temporary legislation before us today will reauthorize the provisions of the previous bill as the temporary expires in January 2024. The tourism industry continues to rebound as evidenced by recent data trends. Travel and tourism industry in our city has generated up to $7.1 billion annually in the pre-pandemic years, including $2 billion in spending on hotel rooms alone. In 2022, tourism rose 10% from the previous year and is now about 9% short of the 2019 levels. As tourism in the district continues to grow, it is essential that we meet the demands of our guests by continuing to provide both routine and enhanced housekeeping. And I urge all my colleagues to support this measure. By doing so, we will be supporting our workers as well as our wonderful hotel industry. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and now move the legislation.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councilmember Bonds, for your continued work in this space. I guess I just have 2 points. One is that I feel procedurally it's a bit odd that the mayor asked us to authorize her ability to come up with regulations for this issue, as opposed to work on regulations and then send them to the council for review, especially when we haven't even seen the outcome of those negotiations and regulations at this point after it's been a year or over a year since this began, is just kind of an unusual order of operations to me. But second, as I've spoken about before, I think that it is an overstep for the legislative body to tell an entire sector how their day-to-day operations should work. The example I've given in the past, which I continue to think about, is with restaurants. We don't say, okay, you can only have this server cover 2 tables at once, for example. Why then for the hospitality or hotel industry would we say this is how you have to have day-to-day operations? With that being said, I'm happy to hear that it may have worked to keep folks employed, and there may have been a lot of other benefits of this in the past, but I do think on principle, having our local legislative body intervene in the day-to-day operational decisions and activities of an entire sector is not appropriate. So I'm going to vote no on this today.
Further on the declaration? I'll just weigh in and say that I'll be supporting for this. I'll be supporting and voting for this declaration as I have done in the past. And listening to the comments of my colleague, we've taken this posture because this was the posture that was originally followed, and that was authorizing the mayor to adopt regulations. And if I remember correctly, the regulations were temporary, just as our legislation was temporary. And the idea was to get the parties negotiating. If the mayor were to promulgate regulations that she sent to the council, or we were on our own to take regulations and adopt them on a permanent basis, that would be different posture. And I don't think that's where we want to be. My understanding, as I think others have acknowledged, is that there are discussions that are taking place,
Yes.
which is exactly what should be happening.
Yeah.
And I think this legislation, because it's been in existence on a temporary basis, has helped to stimulate those discussions, which I
Yes,
think
it
is a
has.
good thing.
Yeah.
So we would not take a different posture, as in this is an unusual way to go about this, because this is intentionally meant to be temporary to get the parties talking. And and it appears to be effective. So I'll be supporting this declaration. Is there anything else on the declaration? Councilmember Fruman.
Yeah, so I share the concern about getting too deep into day-to-day operations through legislation as opposed to regulations. I do think that's an odd place for the council to be, but this is a special setting. And as the chairman said, the idea was to get the parties negotiating. And I think that is happening. I hope that they are close to a resolution. I'm going to vote. I said last time the same thing, that I was concerned about this and hoped it could be resolved through negotiation. It didn't happen. I'm going to support it again this time, but this is another one of those things where it can't go on forever. The parties need to solve this, and I hope they'll solve it soon.
Thank you, Councilmember. If there's nothing further on the declaration, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll? The vote is on PR 25-553.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
No.
Councilmember Pinto votes no. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-598. Councilmember Bonds.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the bill? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we will do a voice vote. The vote is on Bill 25-598. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, it didn't.
Mr.
pass
Chairman, please
unanimous.
record me as voting no.
I was going to ask if there are any no votes. Are there any no votes? Councilmember Pinto?
No.
Anyone else? Madam Secretary, would you record Councilmember Pinto as voting no?
So noted, Mr. Chairman.
The ayes have it. The next measure is PR 25-559, Paul Lawrence Dunbar Apartments, TOPA Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. The concern that we were responding to as of last week has since been resolved. So at this time, I will be withdrawing the measure. And
The measure is withdrawn. Councilmember Nadeau, you wanted to be recognized for something else?
I do. Pursuant to Council Rule 345, I move to reconsider PR 25-474, the Board of Library Trustees Maria Peace Confirmation Resolution of 2023. I know at least one colleague was not present when we took the vote, and I understand there are others who may wish to change their votes. So moved, Chairman.
All right, there's a motion to reconsider.
Mr. Chairman, may I request a roll call?
Sure, I'm going to say that this is in order. I'm not, because we passed the declaration and we passed the bill, but this would be, what are we moving to reconsider? We're reconsidering 25-4, excuse me, I'm all messed up here.
Sure, 25-474, the
Correct.
Board of Library Trustees. Yes, okay.
Okay, and you've asked for a roll call vote. I think a motion to reconsider is debatable.
If the underlying is debatable, so yes, in this case.
It's debatable if anybody wants to debate it.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. McDuffie.
I experienced some technical difficulties last time the vote came up. I know there was some, I don't know if it was a conversation on the dais, but I missed some aspect of what may have been the debate around the nominee. My question would be, I guess, to the chairman of library committee, whether he still, given what he knows now, supports the nominee. I understand that there was a reference to when was the last time she had a library card. Is there any indication that despite not having a library card for some time, that she is or does not have the experience to actually fulfill her duty as a member of the library board of trustees? Because I don't know that one necessarily amounts to her not having the necessary experience or qualifications otherwise.
Thank you, Councilman McDuffie. As usual, the mayor sends a nomination to the council. Per our normal tour of duty, we go through the hearing process to hear from the public and government witnesses about this particular nomination. I had no real reservation for Ms. Pace beyond what I heard from the council. And so there's not any over enthusiasm about the nomination, but there's no reserve for me. I mean, it's just a nomination. I haven't had anything that stuck out to me that worried me. And so I think some of my colleagues are more concerned about other things, which they should express. But for me, it's another mayoral nomination. If there's anything that stuck out to me, I would have noted it and expressed it to the council.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And then not having a library card, I guess, is the point for me. While it does seem troubling, I have a library card, but I also have kids who are not so young anymore, but require me to go to the library, and I don't get inside the library as much as I used to. But I am still an avid reader, and I listen frequently to my books these days just because of the hectic nature of my schedule. But I want to not give short shrift to the nominee's qualifications. While I will consider the fact that she doesn't have a library card, I'm also going to consider all the other things that appears from her resume, experience, connection to the district, experience and background with operations and governance, which is ultimately the role of a board of trustees members is in the governance field. So I plan to support it.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Councilmember Fruman.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I guess to you, Chairman Mendelson, and to Chairman White, is it procedurally possible to withdraw the nomination for this session and we consider it at the December 19th session? Because we're all operating sort of on the fly with a little information, and I voted present last time. I probably am inclined to vote present again, but none of us focused on this in the way that you would want to if it was something as big as rejecting the mayor's nomination. I'm not comfortable doing it based on what I've heard so far, but I do want to look at it more closely. Is that possible?
Chairman, point of order.
What's the point of order?
The motion is whether to reconsider.
Yeah.
It's not on the measure itself.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're limiting debate to the motion.
I think sometimes the discussion going a little bit beyond specifically reconsidering.
We're very good
is
at that.
helpful. No, it's helpful to giving members a comfort in however they're going to vote. So my answer to Councilmember Fruman is that there is a motion pending to reconsider. I don't believe, and I'm going to just rule that a motion to postpone would not be in order. If the motion to reconsider succeeds, a motion to postpone would be in order then. So I think we have to, when I say I think, we have to dispose of this motion before we would.
Very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yes. If there's nothing further on the motion to reconsider, this is a motion to reconsider. I think we all know what it is, 25-474, the mayor's nomination. And I think Councilmember Nadeau, you asked for a roll call vote.
I did, thank you.
So Madam Secretary, the vote is on whether to reconsider. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Councilmember Parker,
Yes, to reconsider.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto,
To reconsider.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White,
No.
Councilmember Trayon White votes no. Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds,
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman,
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie,
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson,
No.
Chairman Mendelson votes no. Councilmember Nadeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 11 yeses and 2 nos.
The motion to reconsider is approved. We have the bill, the resolution, that's resolution 25-474 before us.
Mr. Chairman, is this the appropriate time to try to make a motion to postpone or to make a request that we postpone? Because,
It would be in order to try.
okay. I would like to make a motion that we postpone or alternatively request.
No,
that-
you can only make
Okay,
one.
I make a motion to postpone.
You only get one of the.
Learning as I'm going.
So there's a motion to postpone to the next legislative meeting. Which is debatable.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to ask a question of Councilmember Trayon White first. And maybe somebody else could answer if you can, and that is, when is this nomination deemed approved or disapproved?
I will have to get that. I don't have it in front of me.
If somebody could look that up real quickly.
I believe it's sometime in January, Mr. Chair.
January 25th.
I'm told January 25th.
That sounds about right, but I haven't yet to verify.
Okay, so just so everyone is clear, Councilmember Fruman has moved to postpone to the next, this matter to the next legislative meeting. And the nomination is valid as a nomination until January 25th. Further discussion on the motion to postpone to January 25th? Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna speak to this just because I was the one who originally asked a question. I just asked a question. And I just want to say that, again, in light of our breakfast conversation, I feel as though sometimes with nominations, we just approve them because they were sent. And this may seem innocuous to folks. I think we have one of the best public library systems in the country. I think if you're going to be on the board of our library system, then I should be able to see from the documents in your statement, et cetera, a demonstrated interest in the system or some other thing, right? Sometimes people are put on boards for other reasons or other levels of expertise that they're bringing to the body, whether it be around real estate, that could be it, whether it be around business, that could be it, operations or otherwise. And so if the majority of my colleagues feel like they can gather more information between now and the next meeting, I'm happy to support this, but I'm also want to say to the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments, the Office of Policy and Legislative Affairs, I hope you're taking this as a signal that the days of us just stamping them are over. Please send us individuals with complete packets of information, and not on the day we take a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm told that I misspoke. The motion is to postpone to the next legislative meeting. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember McDuffie,
just what's the date of the next legislative meeting?
It could be the 19th or it will be January 9th. The motion is postponed to the next legislative meeting.
Okay, I wanted to follow up this, if that's okay.
Well, speak up.
I did, and you just answered the question. I wasn't finished. I think I have a little bit more time left. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask Councilmember Freeman what he thought he might seek to accomplish between now and the next legislative meeting. I think I appreciate what Councilmember Henderson expressed in her line of questioning, and I think it's appropriate to ask those types of questions. I think there's a time in which it is probably best asked, and that's leading up to the hearing, during the hearing, and leading up to the vote. But to the extent members still have questions that they'd like to get answered, I want to understand the desire to postpone the vote. Now, I mean, the code says you should have a demonstrated interest in the public libraries. And I appreciate the question about a library card. I don't know in and of itself whether that demonstrates an interest. I think there are other things that would demonstrate an interest, given the broad range of what the public library system does. I do agree that we have one of the best public library systems in the country. I would ask, Councilmember Trayon White, if there was anything that was brought to his attention throughout this process, including during the hearing on her nomination, where anybody was opposed, or that to you, did she demonstrate an interest in the district public library system, both serving and putting in the time and the commitment necessary to be a contributing member of the Board of Trustees of DCPL.
Councilmember, can you repeat that?
I wanted to know from you, as chair of the committee, in the hearing and roundtable process, your interactions with the nominee, does she have a demonstrated interest, which is what is required under the code for members serving on the Board of Trustees for the libraries?
The short answer is yes. She met the threshold to be on the board. She expressed interest. She talked about her plans and what she wanted to do as being a DC resident in Ward 7 to have influence on the board. I mean, I can look through some of the notes, I guess, from that, but there was nothing that stuck out to me in the hearing. There was no one opposing, as I mentioned. So it was just a typical hearing from those who supported her.
Got it. I appreciate that. And I know, not to oversimplify, Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, but I have a number of boards and commissions within the purview of my committee. I often get involved when they come up and I ask questions. I even make recommendations sometimes to the executive for nominations. I know that every board or commission I have, a person who is nominated doesn't necessarily have a license or a permit in the purview of that board or commission. While I think it is important, I don't think it's dispositive if the person doesn't have that. And so I think we don't need to postpone it. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So Councilmember McDuffie posed a question to me about what did I think that could be gained by a delay. And I will say, until 10 o'clock, well, no, it was a long morning. So till a couple of hours ago, I would have deferred both to the mayor and to the committee on this. I hear Councilmember Henderson's point, and I think Councilmember Parker and others have made a similar point that we need to be less deferential on these appointments, and that is a fair point. But this is very much of a moving target to me, and I would use this time to reach out to the appointee to try to get a sense of whether, regardless of whether she has a library card, which is an indication of her interest in the library system, what was her interest in the library system and how had it been expressed itself over time. So I'm reluctant on the what feels like on the fly to throw all of that deference out of the window and would prefer to do some exploration in a window of time. And that's what I think could be gained and could be gained by others.
We have the,
Chairman.
yes, I'm trying to get us to a vote, but yes, Mr. White.
And I will take leadership on asking any additional questions from members. If I need to, that's not a problem for me. I just want to caution because we often have conversations about nominations to different committees that we can't fill. And then those nominees not being DC residents and then going outside of DC. And so, you know, I guess for me, if someone is qualified and doesn't have any legal issues or any ethical issues or character issues, then typically I go with that. And so if there are any concerns, I would love to address it, but I haven't heard many of those outside of the library card issue. Which
I did. I reached out previously because we have library issues, particularly in Ward 4, regarding the potential future of the Juanita Thornton Shepherd Park Library, as well as the future of the Kennedy Street Library.
Yeah,
And
but I was
so
speaking in reference to this candidate.
Oh, okay. And that's the only reason it would give me more time. I think Councilmember Duffy asked, what are some of the reasons some members have? For me, though it's been, there have been very politically charged decisions around the securing a Kennedy Street Library, as well as what was about to happen regarding the Juanita Thornton Shepherd Park Library. And so for me, it's important to talk to the candidate about those and whether they will just fall in line with other board members or will be an independent thinker around issues. I think Councilmember Pinto and Brianna had a request for a library in Ward 2, a letter that you all sent. So, I mean, I think there's an interest in members being able to communicate with a candidate of any board that makes decisions that impact our community members.
We have before us a motion to postpone to the next legislative meeting. By a voice vote, all those in favor of the motion to postpone, say aye.
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 Those opposed. I'm going to say no as well, but I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it, so the matter is postponed.
You're gonna be all right.
All right, folks, we are in the home stretch. We have the temporary legislation, and we always adopt that in block unless
Mr.
there's
Chairman.
objection.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's asking to be recognized? Councilmember Pinto, there's something you voted no on.
Yes, I'm looking up the bill title, but it's the hotel cleaning bill.
Yes, got it.
You can do a separate vote on that. please.
Okay. So if there's no objection, we will.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
We're on the temporaries, correct?
correct.
Okay, I'm gonna move a table. I'm trying to find it on my agenda, to get the right number. But the temporary, where is it? Streetery Program Extension Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. In light of the concerns that have been raised, I appreciate my colleagues in debate. Well, the concerns raised on the breakfast vote on the dais as well. I think it'll give us some time to work with the executive around the DDOT regulations. I'm in communication with Councilman Charles Allen as well, and I think we both like the opportunity to.
Duffy, you're out of order. You can say that you want it pulled out of the group, but then we'll deal with it. I do want to ask our general counsel, our rules require that a temporary has to move with an emergency. Is that for first reading? So if it doesn't move today, would it be out of order later?
Yes, because it has to move with an emergency. Yes.
All right, so the effect of our not voting on the temporary today is that it could not be voted on.
Oh, so just, it would have to be, what's the proper way to remove it from the agenda then, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you can't remove it from the agenda if you want to be able to vote on it later. If you want to slow it down, we could vote on it today and then you would delay second reading.
Let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it today then.
All right, so
I appreciate it. I think
okay,
there's a little
so
bit of
there's
lag on
no
my end.
objection. We'll be voting in block on number 1, Green Housing Transition Extension Temporary. That's Bill 25-589. Number 3, which is adjustment of building restriction line in square 2950. That's Bill 25-584. Bill number 4, which is Bill number 25603, retired firefighter and police officer redeployment temporary. Bill 25-603. And number 5, which is Bill number 25601, Fidelity and Electronic Communications Second Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. Hearing no objection, that's what's before us. Those 4 bills. Streeter is not part of this, and hotel cleaning is not part of this, and Paul Lawrence Dunbar is not part of this. I usually make the secretary go through a roll call vote. I think we'll do a voice vote here. Everyone's clear what we're voting on? I am. Green housing, adjustment and building restriction line, retired firefighter, and Fidelity and Electronic Communications. By voice vote, all those in favor of the temporary say aye.
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 Are there any no votes? I don't hear any no votes. All right, those 4 are approved unanimously. Number 2, Councilmember McDuffie, I pulled that out. Maybe I shouldn't have. If you want to postpone it, but you want to be able to deal with it later, I recommend that you move it today. And then you delay it at second reading.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I should have tried to clarify that a little earlier. But yeah, I'd like to first go ahead and move it today. And then Charles Allen and I and the folks who raised concerns, we can deal with it on second reading. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question about this?
Yes.
So,
yes.
yeah, so say the emergency took effect December 10th and lasts for 90 days. Is the idea that we could postpone dealing with the temporary December 10th, January 10th, February 10th, March 10th? So anywhere up until March, we could have to have a second vote on the temporary and have the temporary kick in seamlessly if the regulations haven't come.
Well, remember, temporary has to go to Congress. The temporary has to go to Congress and has to have 2 readings. I don't want to speak for Councilman McDuffie, but I believe he wants to work out some issues.
I'm happy to speak to it if it's appropriate, Mr.
Chairman. Sure.
Just briefly, thank you for the question, Councilmember Fruman. I've been in conversation with colleagues about this in advance of today's vote, both on the emergency and on the temp. And I think a better way to approach it is to have the emergency go into effect, work with the executive, push them to get the DDOT regs published and open for comment, public comment, and then, if necessary, move to temporary. Also with the understanding that ABCA has a permanent bill, which likely won't go into effect, and we will need a temporary, but I want to use this time with my colleagues to work with the executive on the regulations.
So I don't know if that answered your question, Mr. Fruman. Our rules require that a temporary is in order if it moves together with an emergency. So that's why it has to be approved today, or else it's not in order. But it requires 2 readings. And we have often, I'm looking at Councilmember Allen, because he did this for about 2 years. He kept postponing I exaggerate when I say 2 years, kept postponing whatever that was on the police accountability bill. So it could be postponed, but at some point we run up against the 90 days expiring on the emergency. But this gives Mr. McDuffie flexibility, and he's put us on notice that he may want to work on the bill some more and he may want to delay the second reading.
All right, thanks a lot.
So the vote will be on Bill 25-594, the street reprogram temporary. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote is unanimous. Hotel cleaning and notice of service interruption temporary, Bill 25-599. I'm going to speak for Councilmember Bonds and say so moved. Is there discussion? Are we okay with the voice vote? All those in favor of the bill say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No.
That means Councilmember Pinto is voting no. Not that there's nobody opposed. The measure, the temporary is approved on first reading. The number 7, the Paul Lawrence Dunbar was withdrawn. I'm sorry, but I think that we are at the end of this fun. Unless anybody wants to reconsider the entire meeting. The committee of the whole meets on January 19th, and the next regularly scheduled legislative meeting is January 9th. The time is, the time is 4:11 PM. This meeting is adjourned. Did I misspeak?
No, you did.
4:11, we're adjourned.